I met Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father. And he goes, let me get this straight. You were an engineer who started a music company. You have an MBA. You work at Apple and you're black. Dude, you don't exist. You're not real. But we really hit it off. And he goes, you should run digital strategy for Beyonce. And I was like, yes, I should totally do this. And when I first got a chance to meet her, she came into the boardroom. It was like, oh.
This is In Community with Fahad Khwaja. Dr. Marcus Collins, welcome. It's good to be in community with you today.
Man, it's always be in good community with you. It's always good times.
We haven't had a chance to catch up in a while, and there's a lot to catch up on. There's a lot going on, and I want to give the opportunity for listeners and viewers to get a chance to know the Marcus behind what they see in the public-facing view, behind the talks, the stages, the book, all of that work. So take me back to the beginning. Take me back to one of your earliest memories.
Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind for me is being in our dining room where we had a record player and listening to Michael Jackson's Thriller album over and over and over and over and over again. I remember like just wanting to be Michael Jackson so badly as a kid. I just everything for me revolved around Michael. Even when we would go to my grandparents' house for Christmas, we didn't have cable at our house, but my grandparents did. And I would sit in front of the television with MTV on all day long, just waiting for them to play either Thriller, Beat It, or Billie Jean, like that. And because of that, I got introduced to so many different musical artists that I otherwise would not have known. It was only because of Michael.
What was it about Michael that stood out to you?
He embodied a different representation of blackness that I didn't know was a possibility, was acceptable. You know, there was like a tough sort of masculine version of manliness in my community, whether it was like physical brute, or maybe it was because of, authoritative stature, like a pastor, a minister, or a boss, right? Or my father, who was like a little guy, like he wasn't like very tall, very big, but I was terribly afraid of him. Michael was like softer and, a gentler representation of masculinity, but also had great command, and also, could win over the ladies. And I was like, wow, like there's just a different way to be a man. And he had all the things that really that gravitated towards, like singing ability, dancing ability, and he just felt very comfortable in his own skin, ironically. At least for me, as a child, Michael just felt very much comfortable being Michael. And I just found that to be like really empowering.
Did you emulate that? Any of the things that you were seeing him do? Were you thinking, I want to sing, I want to dance?
Yes, absolutely. Like I was like, that's what I want to do for a living, for sure, 1000%. And the way I sang was all Michael-esque. Like I wanted to dance like him. I wanted to learn all the things. I wanted to do all the things. Like my interest in music was catalyzed because of Michael. And it would be sort of a reoccurring theme, not only as a would-be, wannabe musician, but even today as a scholar and who gets a chance to share ideas on stage. Like I think about the way Michael commands a stage, the way he uses his body, the way he expresses beyond what he says or what he sings. And that level of, like, dare I say, showmanship shows up in the way that I present myself today.
I hear you. And I think the showmanship is a really good way to put it, because I don't think the younger generation these days understands just how big a star Michael was. I mean, the level of spectacle to what he was doing. I remember watching videos as a kid and seeing people literally fainting at his concerts and having to be carried out because they were just so overwhelmed and overcome by the environment and everything that was going on around them and what they were seeing on stage, it was something unlike what I think you can really imagine, even with the biggest stars today.
That's right. I tell my kids, my eldest daughter in particular, because she talks about how much she loves Taylor Swift, and she's such a big artist. I go, totally, she is. Like Beyonce, huge artist, absolutely, she is. But I go, but like Michael's like 10x them. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, Georgia, when Michael Jackson will release a new music video, everything stopped. And she's like she thought I meant figuratively. I was like, no. Like, if he released a music video at 10 p.m., like Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, Channel 50, Channel 20, and MTV would say, we're interrupting your broadcast for a world premiere of a Michael Jackson music video. Everyone watched it at the same time, shoulder to shoulder. That was the cultural saliency of Michael. And like, how do you not want to be that or emulate that or at least be inspired by that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell me a little more about the community that you grew up in. You were talking a bit about how Michael was very, very different than the figures around you, which makes sense. But talk a little more about that community itself. What was it like? The people, the environment. What was it like where you grew up?
Yeah. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, which is one of the blackest cities in the country. Our mayor was black, our school board was black, our police chief was black, the fire department was black. Like, it was a black city, right? And I was so proud of that. I went to public schools my entire time there. But interestingly, my brother and I were swimmers. So while being in a predominantly black city, we would swim on teams where we were like the only black people. And interestingly, I would feel like the blackest person on the planet in these swim teams. But then when I go to school, I get called a white boy. And it's an interesting paradox, where it's like, too foreign for here, too foreign for there, never enough anywhere, as a Nigerian poet puts it. And that's sort of kind of my existence. Like, I never felt like I didn't feel like a reject or like I wasn't like cool, but there was always that level of sort of tension. And I sort of kind of stayed out of trouble because my parents were very much like, my mother would tell my brother and I, if you go to jail, don't ever call me. She's like, I don't visit jails. I visit graduations. I go to graduations, not jails. So if you go to jail, don't even bother calling because I ain't coming. So my brother and I bet, stay out of trouble. So we kept a very clean nose. If trouble was going one way, we're going the opposite way. It's very much how we were reared. And so I guess the focal point of the community that we found ourselves in was church. We were church boys. My uncle, so this is my father's twin brother married my mother and her sister, and we grew up next door to each other. So I essentially had two sets of parents, and my first cousins were raised like my siblings. So in my mind, I had like 5 siblings because we were raised literally next door to each other. And my father's twin brother was our pastor. And so church was just a part of our identity, still is, but a part of our identity and part of our lives. So we were anchored in that. School was very much a big part of what we did. Swimming, very much a big part of what we did. And I was always like singing in choir or playing in band or doing something that was musically affiliated. And that was just the worlds we revolved in. I mean, it was easy to stay out of trouble because we didn't have any time. We were just like either in church, in school, in band, in swim practice. That was our lives.
No idle hands.
No, seriously, it was not. I mean, even the summers, we would be either in swim camp, band camp, church camp, and then we would travel. My brother went to Brazil to do a summer there. Then the following year, I was in Sweden for a summer. Like, my parents has always kept us very much engaged, realizing that Detroit was a tough place to live growing up. And we were like very solid middle class, like right in the middle class. But calamity was on every side of us for sure.
So about how old were you when you went to Sweden?
I was 11 years old.
And was that all on your own?
So yeah, it was this program called CISV, the Children's International Summer Village. And what they would do is, for the program I went to, my brother did a study abroad, like not study abroad, like
Exchange of some
exchange,
sort.
exactly. Yeah, he lived with the family for a summer, and then the next summer, the son in that family lived with us. So it was just that that exchange. My program was called. It was a village where there were 4 kids and an adult that represented a delegation, and there were roughly, I want to say 30 delegations, or maybe 24. I know I 24 sticking in my mind. 24 delegations represented in this like village, and for like a month, every day we experienced life through the lens of someone else's culture. So for the States, we ate hamburgers, French fries, and learned to play basketball. Like all the games, all the songs, all the things were the cultural production of like the prototypical American culture. Then we did that for Mexico, for Romania, for Brazil, for Denmark. It was amazing. It was amazing, and I didn't appreciate it then as much as I do now. But like I was 11 years old in another country without the internet, without a cell phone, and like writing letters to my parents. Like that was like me. My kid, I can't even let my kid go down the street without an air tag on her. It's just so wild the way the times have changed. But like, as an 11-year-old, that was pretty significant.
That's incredible to be so young and to go so far away from home and be in a culture that is so different in so many ways. The food, the language, the people, the environment around you. How long were you there?
We were there for 5 weeks.
5 weeks is a long time, especially when you're a young kid.
Forever. What's wild? It's wild. And I bet my mother still had the letters. When I was at the village, like I wasn't like homesick. Like I wasn't like, I wasn't scared. Like we had such a good time. It was so immersive. We knew like, we had developed a relationship with the people who were in our delegation. So I didn't feel like I was by myself already. But like, I was so excited and had such a good time. And the midway through the program, we stayed with the family. So they broke us up. They put us like pairs with someone else, another delegation, and we stayed with the family for the weekend, then came back to the village. And I was terribly village sick. Like I missed the village, not being home. Like when I was with the family that took us in for that weekend, I cried every single day, all day. Not missing home, but missing the village. It's just wild. I mean, it's wild the impact that those experiences have and how permanent they can feel. I mean, this is like 34 years ago, but it still feels very, very salient today.
Let's go back a little bit, though. I want to go back to something that you started talking a little bit about, which was that idea of being too foreign for here, too foreign for there, and sort of being in this in-between space. What was it that was driving that? Tell me more about what it was that made you feel that way.
I think that on the swim side, obviously just being physically different, made my brother and I feel we were kind of othered, I think it was always like, we always felt like we didn't know anybody there at all. We went to these swim camps, we didn't know anybody. So my brother and I just kind of stuck together, even though he's 5 years older than me. So we were always in different groups. And, we could always kind of get the looks, get the feeling like we didn't belong, until we got in the water and started whooping people's butt. And that's, they're like, Marcus, this is my guy. So it wasn't until like you performed that you felt like, you were accepted, which I think is sort of a reoccurring theme in corporate America as well, But then you juxtapose that experience with being in school, and like, because of how you talk, because of how you act or things you won't do, you're called a white boy or a square. And it's like, oh man, like why is that considered white? And of course, these are permeating challenges that are in the Pan-African American identity this sort of notion that like, intelligence is, more associated with whiteness than it is with blackness. In the 80s and 90s, I think that felt like very, very tangible, at least in my earlier years. In high school, you just start to find people like you. And like, I feel like I felt very much like a cool nerd. Like I took all AP courses. They had like all cool kids, or AP courses. Like I was cool with all of them, but then like I was cool with like the guys who were getting into trouble as well. I mean, they never like bothered me because they were like, Marcus is like, it's almost like got a pass. Like it was like Marcus is doing things with his life. Not going to, give him. No one ever like tried to fight me or anything like that. But I certainly was othered.
I think that's something that you and I have in common, where I not only felt like I was between worlds, but that feeling sort of ended up helping me connect with people from lots of different backgrounds. I was with this end of the spectrum as well as the other end of the spectrum. Was friends with the valedictorian and also the person who might have been last in the class because I was able to find those commonalities. But my father's side of the family is from Pakistan. My mother's side is from Malaysia, and I grew up around the Middle East before moving here, and so was in this third culture environment as well, where again, I was always between worlds. So I feel you on that. It's sort of this strange, unique feeling, but ultimately I think it ended up helping me. Tell me a little more about that point where you started, finding those people, finding your people in high school or beyond. Was there a point where you felt like you didn't quite have that confidence yet? When did you start feeling that? Or did you always feel like you were sort of confident in yourself?
Yeah, I'd like to say yes, but I feel like I was always sort of battling some sense of insecurity. I think that like, I think if I'm being very honest, that like I wanted to belong, but always felt like just not fully enough. I was constantly on stage, performing, singing, playing, like constantly sort of out front. I felt confident there, but would consistently feel a sense of not being fully accepted, the wrong word, but not fully
Understood,
seen and understood. Yes.
when do you think that started to change for the better?
Man, I will probably not until like my 30s, honestly. Like it's further in life where I guess I just realized that I'd spend so much time trying to be seen, trying to convince people, trying to help people see me and my worth and what I bring to the table and why I am the way I am. Like, that I grew up loving the Monkees as much as I love A Tribe Called Quest, right? Like why what constitutes Marcus is what it is and why you see what you see. I just stopped trying to convince people. And I think that once I stopped trying to convince people and just said, I'm just going to double down on just being the best version of me to impress myself, I think that's when things started to change. And it took some time to get there. I mean, it took me 30 plus years. But once I got there, I was just like, look, it ain't for everybody. And that's fine.
Did you have a sense of where you wanted to go? Did you have a sense of clarity on what was going to come next? And what did you do next?
So in my mind, I was going to be the fifth member of Boyz II Men. It was just like, that was going to be it. Like they're going to find me and they're going to be like, where have you been all this time, Marcus? Come join the group.
I mean, you're definitely dressed the part.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true. I love me some Boyz II Men. That was my thinking. And when I got to graduation, just like anyone in the 90s, if you're black and you did well in math and science, you're going to be an engineer. And that was sort of the calculus for my next steps, that I want to be a musician, want to be in Boyz II Men, but like the chances of that happening are very slim. And this is going to be like, this is about being an adult. This is about growing up. So I went to Michigan to study materials engineering because I thought that's what I wanted to do. I thought polymers was interesting. And while I do think polymers is interesting, I just wasn't terribly interested. I don't think couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. So, and my GPA definitely told the similar story. Like, this probably isn't for you. So I took some music theory courses to offset my terribly embarrassing GPA, and I fell in love with major sevenths. And I was like, the relationship between these chord changes, between these intervals, relationships between these modal mixtures. I was like, this is what I want to do. And what I think I felt so connected to it is that it put all the music that I loved growing up into context. Like it went from being sort of this intangible thing. I just felt connected to Michael Jackson. I just felt connected to Stevie Wonder, connected to Boyz II Men, connected to Babyface. It's like, this is why. It's because of these relationships between these chords and these melodies and rhythms. And I was like, I want to be a songwriter. That's what I'm going to do. I told my parents, I was like, Mom, Dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. They're like, out with it. It's like, I want to write songs. They were like, oh, you must be smoking crack. That ain't happening. That ain't happening.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that ain't happening. So I finished my engineering degree and went to the music business after I graduated.
So, of course, your parents weren't super excited about you going directly into the music business, but
put it lightly.
Did it take some time for them to accept it or to come around? And how did you even go about getting into the business? This episode is brought to you by Philo Ads. Philo Ads is built for brands that want premium connected TV placements without the premium price tag. With a 55% multicultural viewing audience and highly engaged audiences on fan-favorite TV networks like A&E, TV One, MTV, OWN, Lifetime, and more, Philo Ads delivers a CTV experience that gets results. So kick off your next campaign with Philo Ads today at ads.philo.tv. That's ads.philo.tv.
You know, we had a bit of an unspoken deal that if I finished my engineering degree, that they would sort of support whatever I do next. Now, whether it's like, I wasn't asking for moral support. I was asking for financial support. I was like, this degree is for you. Now I'm going to go do this thing, help. And, you know, they sort of kind of gave me a little bit of rope to like, all right, let's see what you're kind of going to do here. And I didn't really know how to. Like, I didn't know anybody. I wasn't well connected. But I did get an internship at Universal Music Group. And that was sort of the first step into it. And I wasn't doing anything like remarkable. I was like putting up posters when the artist came to town. Like, I wasn't doing anything real. And I was like, this is not what I dreamt about. This isn't what I set out to do. So I moved back to Ann Arbor, and I ran a recording studio for one of my professors who was in the School of Music. I ran his Studio B. And essentially, whenever the paid sessions were done, I recorded my own stuff. I'd call my friends from Detroit, like, come on up, come through. Like, let's record. Let's do our thing. And that's kind of how things started. I just was just writing and producing, like, honing my skills. And I was getting paid by the studio that I was running, that I was like developing a sound and working with these artists who were just unbelievably talented. And I found a business partner who, like me, was an ex-engineer who didn't want to do engineering anymore. And he took care of all the business, and I took care of all the music. We were trying to get signed by a label, and we had so many close calls, like that we were like this close to getting a deal, then it falls apart. That's just the music industry. So we decided to release a project on our own and support it through these relationships we had developed over time, particularly with brands. We had met the folks at Starbucks, we met the folks at McDonald's, with the NBA, like all of these different entities. And we were able to get them to support the music through performance. Like, we're basically acting like a partner marketing agency more than we were a record label. We didn't know that at the time. We were just like, it's making money, so good. We all good. It didn't matter to us. Until we tried to record another album, we were like, oh, we don't have a really good business model here. And my partner and I said, one of us should probably go to business school to figure this out. So I went to business school to get my MBA to figure it out. And in my mind, it's like, I want to learn from Apple, because Apple's leading this disruption that we know of the music industry. There's let's learn what's going on here. And as I got to understand all the mistakes we were making, I was like, dude, we can't, this isn't going to work out. If I have any gift, it's that I'm always very clear on what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I meet students who go like, I don't know what I do in my life. And I go, I don't even know what that means, dude. I don't even want to tell you. Like,
That's so rare. That is. It's exceptionally rare.
Like for me, it's like I knew as a young kid I wanted to be Michael Jackson, and then I wanted to be the fifth member of Boyz II Men,
Yeah.
and then I wanted to, you know, to be the next Babyface. Like it was always very clear on what I wanted to do. It shifts and it changes and it evolves, but in the moment, it's always crystal clear. So once we started to like move beyond the record label, the music company we started, I knew I wanted to work at Apple. Period. Like full stop. So in business school, I only recruited for Apple. Only. That's it. And people were like, are you crazy? Well, you don't do that. Like, you're supposed to get many offers, then decide which one you want to go with. I go, why do that? Why waste the time? I know exactly what I'm going to do, so I'm going to do that. So I only recruited at Apple and got to work there, working in iTunes, you know, running our partnership with Nike Sports Music, which was dope. And my counterpart on the Nike side as a gentleman named Omar Johnson, who went on to be the CMO of Beats by Dre. So like it's like a really, really good company. And it was right around this time that I met Matthew Knowles, who's Beyonce's father. And he goes, let me get this straight. You were an engineer who started a music company. You have an MBA. You work at Apple and you're black. Dude, you don't exist. You're not real. You know, you're not real. And I go, oh, I'm real. Totally. And he goes, you should run digital strategy for Beyonce. And I was like, yes, I should totally do this. Absolutely. Again, someone seeing something in me that, you know, other people didn't see, or maybe I didn't see in myself. And he gave me just an unbelievable opportunity. Even like working at Apple, there was nothing on my resume said that I was ready for that job for a company like Apple. But Matt Fisher and Ed Swajnajar, those were my managers. They saw something in me. You know, I think it's that ability to be seen, or it is the experience of being seen and someone putting you in action because of what they see in you. I think those are things that become life-changing moments.
How did you even meet Matthew Knowles?
Funny enough, my now wife, then girlfriend, her cousin used to work at Ticketmaster, and Ticketmaster did all the ticketing for Beyonce's tour. And she says, you know, I want to introduce you to the people over there. I think you would love it over there. I was like, great. You know, she introduces me and my email bounces back because the person she introduced me to no longer worked there. That's the director of digital strategy. But as I come to know, my email got forwarded to the general manager. And they were like, whoa, like this guy doesn't work here anymore, but we'd love to meet Marcus. So I go in and meet them, and they're like, yo, this is really interesting. And then they tell Matthew, we met this guy. And Matthew's like, no, dog, he's lying to you. And they're like, no, Matthew, we met him. And he's like, this guy is not real. He's not a real person. Like, they're like, yeah, right. He's an engineer and an MBA and Apple. Come on. This guy's lying to you. So he tells them, I want to meet him. Tell him to come fly to Houston to come meet me. And I went and met him. And, you know, we talked for an hour. And the first 45 minutes had nothing to do with business, nothing to do with music, everything to do with me. Like he was like, I feel like he was like trying to like find the poop. He was like trying to find the lie. But we really hit it off. So much so that he was like, I was only supposed to fly in the morning, fly in out the afternoon. And he was like, stay the night. We'll get you a hotel. We want you to experience Houston because this is where we're headquartered. It was a jarring experience to say the least. But it was super cool.
Once you started the job doing digital strategy for Beyonce, what was the experience actually like?
You know, truthfully, I was never like I'm not in the Beyhive. Like I'm not like a huge Beyonce fan. Always liked her music, but I was like not like a fan like I was of like Boyz II Men or Pharrell. Like I was those kind of like diehard fans there. So I didn't feel like overwhelmed with, oh my God, I work for Beyonce. I never felt that. But I did feel a great sense of responsibility because of what she had accomplished and what Matthew had trusted me with. So I felt very secure in what I could do. And I didn't feel intimidated at all, but I did feel very responsible about doing right by her. And when I first got a chance to meet her, I mean, I worked closely with her, so when I first met her, as she came into the boardroom, it was like, she walked in the door. It was like this kind of glow around her. And interestingly, she just felt so much smaller in person. And like all the air, all the sort of majesty that we associate to her, even back then, like she doesn't carry it with her. Like she's the sweetest person ever. You would think she'd be this diva, but she's not at all. She's like so unbelievably welcoming, so like grateful, but not a pushover by any stretch. She knows exactly what she wants. But she'll never say in a way that is rude or disrespectful or a way that is condescending. And the more I got to know her, the more responsible I felt to making sure that the work that I did was A1, so that people could experience the awesomeness that is her beyond just the music.
So take me through what came next in terms of the transitions and the in-between moments that led you from there to where you are now.
It became very clear to me that the music industry was only incrementally making steps to fully optimize the technologies that are available to us in a digital world. And I remember being in a meeting with Matthew. In fact, we were in Matthew Knowles. We were in Dallas, Texas, and we're meeting Kirk Franklin. So we're in Kirk Franklin's office with his team, with our team, and we're talking about potentially doing some work together. And Matthew's introducing everyone. He's like, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so. And he's like, he's Marcus, this is Marcus here. He's the smartest guy on our team. And I was like, me? The smartest guy on the team? And instead of feeling like sort of grateful for the compliment, I sort of felt like, oh man, if I'm the smartest guy on the team, then the team is in trouble because I ain't the smartest guy.
I would feel the same, by the way.
I felt very nervous because for me, Matthew was the smartest guy on the team. Like I felt really nervous, and I started to like question, how good am I? I was like, how good am I? And when I looked at like my receipts, work with Beyonce, look in the mirror, and I'm like, yo, that was going to work even if I was here or not, dog. It's Beyonce. Like in my mind, I was like, dude, that was going to go. Like I just sort of just said, make it red instead of rouge. It's like so that part kind of ate at me a little bit. Like, how good am I? And then when I started looking at my counterparts who worked in advertising or work with brands, they were just doing so much more exciting things in the space than I was, because the industry just wasn't there. And not only that, but they were actually breaking artists better than the industry was. And I was like, maybe I should be in advertising. I think that might be super interesting. So I went from work with Beyonce to work with a pure play social media agency. This is in 2011, 2010, with a pure play social media agency called Big Fuel. And there I met a gentleman named Steve Stout, who music industry executive who starts a advertising agency with his partners, Jay-Z and Jimmy Iovine. That's all about helping brands thrive in contemporary culture. And Stout gives me opportunity to come build the social practice at Translation. And that was probably the biggest inflection point in my career, because I'm learning about a space that I had known intuitively but didn't have the language to describe. And that anemia, that delta between feeling it and not being able to articulate it, pushed me towards interrogating it in ways that would turn into a scholarly endeavor. And that's sort of what led me into the world of scholarship and academia, while also in practice. This idea of what is social, what is culture, and not the abstract ways we talk about it, but what are the governing physics, the underlying physics that make it go. And that level of curiosity, it drove everything for me, which is why I do what I do now. And it's truly because of my time in Translation.
That was actually also a time when it was an inflection point for the industry, right? It was where digital and social and all of that was changing so rapidly. And if you were at the bleeding edge of it, you were a really rare person. I remember it really vividly. And, I remember it was going to be the year of mobile. I was saying that. Everyone was saying it for about 5 years straight. And then it never was until all of a sudden everything was mobile. It was everywhere, right? And it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to have been there at that moment, we were all just sort of trying to figure it out.
You're not kidding. And it's interesting that it was this new and novel thing that we all knew was the future, but we're still sitting in the present. And that's sort of the interesting tension where where we're going, future, but what's gotten us here is the past. And this tension here makes it really hard to integrate the future with the present. So I think anyone who worked in social in those days felt a similar pain that like no one understood. No one got it. We know we need social in the deck, but social was always a bolt on. We know we need to put it in social, but no one really knew what that meant. At least our partners didn't on the creative side. So therefore it was always a fight, man, just constantly fighting again in the deck, fighting again in front of clients, fighting to get the ideas heard. And I think that, anyone who worked in social in those days probably felt like a sense of marginalization because of it, unless you were at a pure play social agency.
So what was it that made you say it's time to go back to school and, go get your PhD and ultimately write the book and start doing the type of work that you're doing today? You've obviously made a massive impact and continue to do that in spaces all around the world, which really builds on the story that you just told and all the experiences you'd had and who you are. What were the steps that took you down that path?
I had been teaching when I was at Translation. I started teaching at Miami Ad School first, then Hyper Island, and then I got an adjunct role at NYU. And what I found is that the more I invested myself in scholarship, the better the work got. And I was like, oh, this is the biggest cheat. Why isn't anybody doing this? And the better the work got, the more curious I got on the academic side, the teaching side. So that balance just sort of became the space that I occupied. And I found myself just getting like higher and higher in my career as a practitioner, but not growing at the same level as an academic. And a lot of it is because I only knew the scholarship relative to like the books I'd buy in like, Barnes and Noble, like the Hudson News version, articulation of the scholarship. And one of my colleagues here at Ross would say to me like, yo, if you really want to do this, man, you got to invest yourself like you did on the practice side. And I was like, you're right. It wasn't until I really committed myself on the practice side that the practice got better. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do this for real. Like I'm going to get my union card, as it were, in academia, then I'm going to go get a doctorate. So I went to Temple, the Fox School of Business, to study marketing, particularly consumer culture theory. Again, these things I had been exploring and practicing in, and been talking about sort of colloquially, anecdotally, learning about the theories that underpin these things that we talk about, in a colloquial way. And the more I understood the scholarship, the better the Rosetta Stone became for me to describe the world around me, the more I found myself able to touch it, to impact it. And I was like, this is the thing, this all day long. And that scholarship, turned into how do you take what is academically articulated to help marketers be better, not just marketers, but people, be better at leveraging the sway of culture and what they do. So I wrote a book called For the Culture that really is an amalgamation of everything that I've done, from practice to scholarship, even the music side. Like it's very much a part of the narrative that's communicated in the book. And the hope in all this is that we would be better, be better cultural practitioners, such that, not only does it help commerce, but like we're not doing it in a way that is exploitative, where we're not, appropriating people's culture, which we see brands do over and over again. But also I believe that if we understand the impact and influence of culture, then we probably have more agency in our day-to-day lives. I thought that was empowering too.
At this stage, then, what would you say is your overall mission? And what's the impact that you want to have? What's the takeaway that you want people to have from the work that you're doing?
I found that the world in which we reside is not objective, it's subjective. Things aren't the way they are the way that we are. And we see the world through our cultural lenses. That's why for some a cow is leather, for others it's a deity, for some it's dinner. Which one is it? Well, it's all those things, depending on who you are. And if we understand that truth about reality, then we find that our truths are just as valid as someone else's truth, even if they are in conflict. And such that understanding your truth helps you better understand the world writ large. And so long as your truth doesn't mean my oppression, my subjugation, my eradication, my erosion, they're like, yo, we can rock, right? That's a good thing. Like, we get the diversity bonus when we do that. But the minute that your reality means I can't exist, and now we have a problem. And I find that it's this objective view that we have of the world that creates more problems than solutions, that creates more turmoil than benefit. And for me, I think that if we understood what culture truly is and the subjective nature by which we translate the world, I think that we just be better. I think life will just be better. And that might be a little naive and kumbaya, but I do believe it to be true.
I don't think it's naive or too kumbaya. I mean, you know that I'm a big believer in the idea that what connects us is greater than what separates us.
Amen.
Let's talk though a little bit more about something that we haven't gotten to, because beyond all of the things that we've gone through, one thing that jumps out for me is you're doing a lot of things. You're kind of, pulled in a lot of directions at all times. How do you, through all of that, manage to make sure that you're still taking care of yourself? How do you actually take care of your health and well-being?
I would say, honestly, I was not very good at that. Because as you're younger, you can recoup. You just bounce back, dude. Like I'd take a red eye, flights, hit the ground, go right to work, all good. Like my body's like, fam, you can't do that anymore. So I've become better at listening to my body. And listen to like the cognitive side of me as well, that when I feel mentally fatigued, go, it's enough. You're done. I think that comes with a bit of maturity to realize that, like, if I don't make this meaning, the world isn't going to end. Like if this, I want to publish this piece today. If I don't get out till tomorrow, it's going to be fine. I think that requires a level of maturity. Sort of just kind of been around the block a few times. I've learned to prioritize what's most important. And for me, it's faith in my kids. The most important thing, so there is rarely a time where I miss church on Sunday. And there's rarely a time that I miss anything that is significant for my children. It's just kind of what it is. Because I prioritize them, those things, they give me air, they give me oxygen. And I feel like, I feel inspired. I'm able to recoup in ways that I wasn't able before, because it's not just about me, it's about them and the impact that the work can have on the world.
All right, well, we're coming toward the end of the conversation, and I want to make sure that we shift gears a little bit. I want to do a bit of word association. So I'm going to say a word and ask you to say the first thing that comes to mind. It could be one word or it could be a short phrase.
Okay.
And just say whatever comes to mind. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Community.
People.
Family.
Love.
Failure.
Constant.
Success.
Prayerful.
Health.
Not good.
All right, we're going to need to work on that last one. Let's make sure we work
You're
on
right.
that.
You're right.
Final question. Is there a book, a podcast, or something else that you've enjoyed recently that people out there who are listening or watching should make sure that they get their hands on?
This is my go-to. It's a book by a man named Dan Ariely. And I recommend this book because it changed my life. It's called Predictably Irrational. And the book forced me to see the world through the physics of how the world operates. And when I read the book, it rang a bell that I couldn't unring. It literally changed my life. And like, I know Dan, and every time I see him, I'm like, dude, you changed my life, man. You did it. Predictably Irrational. It's an unbelievable book, and it helps us understand, to your point, how more alike we are and how that happens predictably.
I'm going to have to make sure to check that out myself.
It's a great one.
Well, with that, I want to say thank you for making the time and for prioritizing this conversation. It's always a pleasure to be able to get a chance to connect.
Of course, fam. Love to do it.
This episode was brought to you by Philo Ads. Philo Ads delivers premium content, a CTV-first audience, and zero-stress ad buying that works for everyone, from scrappy startups to savvy marketers. So go ahead, shake up your ad buying strategy, and launch your next campaign with Philo Ads today. Make sure to visit ads.philo.tv to learn more. That's ads.philo.tv.